Ouch! I'm Alvin DeRoche, this is Colleen DeRoche, and we're here to talk to you today about what, Colleen?
The child protection system.
In Canada or BC?
Well, in BC and in Canada and all of North America, really.
It does kind of reflect each other, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, you can't just think about, your own particular case. You have to think of everybody, because it's the children that we're talking about, all of them.
Good point. Today I'd like to discuss a little bit about the deaths here in BC and about the medical practices of MCFD.
Well, don't you think we should talk about the more important points so that, people hear what's really going on? I mean, I know the deaths are important, but that's not, I mean, the deaths that occur in foster care are only a small portion of the hideous side effects of the Ministry of Children and Families or Children's Aid getting involved in a child's life.
For instance?
Okay, say a child is in foster care for, even if they're only in foster care for 3 years in their older teenage years, they lose contact with their parents, because of one thing or another, and they end up, after leaving foster care, living on the streets or addicted to drugs because of the emotional trauma of losing their parents, because it is a loss.
Well, historically, isn't this exactly what happened with the natives back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s?
It is, but back then it was more obvious that children were being separated from parents. Now, people are under anybody who has never had to deal with the child protection system, those people aren't aware of the fact that parents are alienated from their children after removal.
You mean as far as their rights are concerned?
Oh, well, you're stripped of your rights. You're stripped of your rights almost. I mean, in some cases it's immediately, even if there's no real legal reason for the child to have been apprehended. I mean, children are not apprehended just because they're abused or neglected. The ministry and other family services, they tend to take in a lot of information, and then instead of, doing a thorough investigation, that's done properly, a lot of times they just feed off this information. That's just some of it, the third party and hearsay that gets used in court is so unbelievably wrong, but they do it.
And they do omit information as well.
Yes, they do, if it doesn't benefit them. You see, they make money off every child that they apprehend. They get more funding. And if that child is deemed, to have a mental illness, they get even more funding for that child. So,
but that child might not have a mental illness when it first goes in, but...
No, but there's a lot of separation anxiety, there's a lot of depression, confusion in children that are apprehended because they don't understand why they've been taken from the only truth that they've ever known. Their base for what life is about is gone.
This family.
Oh, it is, but a lot of times after they get taken into care, there's a period of time where the parents are only allowed to see them with a supervisor there, which means they're, not bonding properly with their child because there's somebody sitting there watching them, taking notes. And a lot of times those notes are twisted when it gets into the courtroom, and...
to fit their needs.
Yeah, and I know this because I have sat through, in the last 4 years, I have spent so much time in court. We both have. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, all the cases that we've heard, people that we know, or situations that we know because we saw it, and then we hear a social worker saying the exact opposite in the courtroom.
That's right.
And about ourselves as well.
Yep.
And then after traveling across Canada, talking to people in every province about the child protection system, it just became incredibly obvious that social workers are not acting on the best interest of the children. And
or Canadians.
all the people that write their stories into Canada Court Watch and, post their stories on YouTube and other websites, all those people, we all need to start coming together and thinking about this as our case, not my case, your case, their case, our case, and coming together and talking about real solutions. We need to brainstorm. We can't just have, even if 1,000 people did a protest, that's not good enough. We need to do something that's going to work.
A class action suit.
Because children have literally no voice in this country.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, I've gone all the way, aside from writing letters to people in Parliament, which is a total waste of time, I've spoken to each person at every step of the complaints process, all the way up to the Deputy Minister's office, and only got responses like, well, if a judge ordered it, then it must have been the way it should have been.
But
wow.
The judge doesn't always have all the information because the ministry is allowed to exclude information,
That's right.
omit information that could sway the judge a different way. Is that not true?
That is true, and I have seen them, particularly in my own case, I have seen the social worker and their lawyer submit false evidence. I've seen them submit documents with false evidence to the court, so the judge may not even have all the right evidence. And a lot of times, social services or the Ministry of Children and Families goes into court and says, we've apprehended this child because of this reason, that reason, and this reason. The judge just stamp, okay, no questions asked, the parents aren't there. And it takes a lot of guts to go to court when you don't have representation, because a lot of people, obviously, a target for the Ministry of Children and Families are people on income assistance because they can't fight it. They don't have the means to fight it. Your child gets apprehended, you've got about 7 days before the ministry has to report to court. And in that 7 days, you're busy trying to figure out what the hell legal aid is, getting all these documents together to see if you qualify. Meanwhile, your job is on the line because you've had to take a few days off,
Let's give them an example. Let's say when we went to court back in 2004, and we had a social worker on the stand, and we provided a line of questioning that produced some real evidence. You remember when we had let's call her social worker A, and
she had to admit who her source of information was, and it was a false source?
That's right.
Yes. Things like that happen constantly, but that's neither here nor there. We can't focus on the small...
Well, it's not small, but see, if people understood...
We can't focus on the small points.
If people understood that for 2 years the children were apprehended based on a lie, and then once that lie was caught in a courtroom, still nothing happened.
Okay, but you're talking about our individual case, Alvin, and I think we should be talking about our case, Canada's case, because my kids might be hurting, but so are the kids next door that got apprehended, and so are the kids over there that got apprehended, and they might be even hurting worse than mine. So, we need to focus on, the whole 10,000 children that are in care today, the whole 10,000 children that were in care last year, the whole 10,000 children, how many kids are going to be in care in 10 years from now if we don't all stand up together and do something about it